Let's take a breath. I saw everybody singing along with and heard people singing along with that song. Isn't that wonderful? I wonder, did you really mean it? Get ready, my soul, I'm diving in. That's what I've been talking about ever since I've been here. Let's dive into this thing. I keep saying that we are not here to do spirituality light. We're here to do spirituality deep. We're here to dive deeper, to go deeper. And I encourage you every week in every way I know how in English, and I'm going to take the Spanish class too. So, so I can speak to you sometimes in Spanish. But I'm saying to you, go deep. It's time for us to go deep. The world needs our consciousness. The world needs us to go deeper. The world needs us to, there's a phrase from Ernest Holmes that keeps coming up, and I can't call it up right now, but I know the end of it says that we want to go to the outer realms where our soul recognizes our own I amness. Our soul recognizes our own I amness. And when we go deep, when we dive deep, we're getting into that place where we are in recognition of our own I amness. And we have this I amness because we are made in the image and likeness of the I am. The only am that is the power and the presence of God. And so if we're telling our souls to get ready because I'm diving in, let's dive in. Let's dive in. Don't just stick your toe in it. Don't just dip and walk around the edge. Just dive in. That's what. That was not what I was going to start off with this morning. But that's what Spirit wanted you to hear this morning. Dive in. That's what we have to do. And that takes me right into the topic for today, which is the freedom in consistency. The freedom in consistency. And this is in line with our other topics that we've had this month with our theme, our overarching theme of bursting the bubble of limitations. Bursting the bubble of limitations. Bursting the bubble of limitations. And we've talked about a couple of the ways that we are limited. Anything that restricts us or encumbers us or hinders us or blocks us in any way is a limitation. And whether it's real or perceived, if we think it is, if we believe it is a limitation. It limits us. And so we're looking at ways that we can burst the bubble of limitation. And today I'm talking about, as I said, the freedom in consistency. And it's in the consistency, in the act of being consistent, where the freedom lies. So you notice I didn't say of consistency from the external. It's in consistency. There's freedom in consistency. And one thing I want you to know about consistency, it's sort of two-pronged. There can be limitation in consistency also. When we are consistently doing those things that we don't really want to experience, consistently doing those things that lead to things we don't want to experience, consistency still works. It still works to bring us the things we don't want. But what we want to do is focus our attention on being consistent, being steadfast, being repetitive, being true, being determined, all those things that define consistency. We want to experience those things and practice those things so that we can experience what we want to have in our lives, so we can experience the life that we want, so we can experience life, so we can experience the allness and the fullness of God in our lives, as our lives. That's what consistency is all about, when we're doing the same thing over and over to get the result we want. I'm not talking about the insanity that we know about, where you do the same thing over and over and you expect a different result. This is one where we're doing the same thing over and over and expecting the same result. That's what consistency is about. And that's what's so important for us if we're talking about diving in, for us to be consistent. And so I'm starting out by asking you to just think about three things I want you to think about. One is, think about the ways in which you are consistent in your life. The ways in which you are consistent, the areas of your life where you're consistent. When you start to think about where you're consistent in your life, that will also take us right into what we are 100% committed. To what are we 100% committed? Because those things that we're 100% committed to are the things we're consistent about. Those things that we're consistently doing are the things we're 100% committed to. It's real simple, isn't it? Not always easy, but think about it. The things that we consistently do that bring the results that we don't want, we consistently are saying, I want to release some weight, yet I'm consistently not eating properly, I'm consistently not exercising, I'm consistently not doing those things that would lead to that goal. That's how consistency works. I want to release weight, I consistently start to exercise, I consistently start to eat properly, I consistently start to rest and sleep properly. Whatever it is we want to experience in our lives, we have to have some kind of consistency with it. So starting to look at what is it in your life that you're 100% committed to. I had a class sometime before I left California, and I asked, that was the first question I asked the class. What is it that you're 100% committed to? And there was one woman who immediately said, my health. And everybody else just stared at her because everybody else was trying to figure out, what am I 100% committed to? But she immediately said, my health. And that really struck me because she was real clear. No question about it, no doubt about it. She didn't have to think about it. It was like right out of her mouth as soon as I asked the question. And that really impressed me, and it has always stuck with me because I immediately started, as the class was going on, I started to think about how I have observed her living her life. And the way that she walked through the world was consistent with that commitment to her health. The way she did things, the way she talked, the way she acted, the way she exercised, the way she ate, all the things that she did that I saw, that the outer world could see, were consistent with that 100% commitment that she had to her health. And it really started me to thinking about, to what am I 100% committed? And I think it started all of us in that class to think about, to what am I 100% committed? And I'm asking you, to what are you 100% committed? To what are you willing to do over and over and over again to get to the result that you want, to have the success that you want to have, to lead the life that you want to lead? Let's take a breath. To what are you 100% committed? What areas of your life, in what areas of your life have you been consistent? In what areas of your life have you been consistent to be successful at getting what it is you want, getting what it is you desire? Just think about that. Identify those areas and then decide, what did I do? How did I get to be so consistent in that area? What did I do to get to that place? And then repeat that. And then repeat that. But the big part of that is consistency. The big part of that is commitment. The big part of that is deciding, what am I really committed to? And you know what? That's a question for every area of our lives. Every area of our lives. Because it is the commitment that will take us to the consistency that will take us to the success that we want to experience. And so I invite you to identify those areas and then start to dive in. Start to live it. Start to do it. Don't just talk about it. We don't have time to just talk about it. We really don't. We spend a lot of time talking about stuff, and it's time for us to do the things that we want to do. It's time for us to accomplish the things we want to accomplish. It's time for us to open up and live full out. And that's what I'm encouraging us to do with consistency. The second thing I want to mention is, that keeps coming through, is don't squeeze the cactus. That's from the 4T class. In the 4T class, there's a story that Stretton Smith tells, and he calls it Don't Squeeze the Cactus. And it's about a woman whose daughter had died, 19-year-old daughter had died in a tragic car accident. And she had gone in to see her minister for counseling and guidance. And she had talked to him for a long time. She had told him the story. And then once she started to repeat herself and go through that whole story again, the minister stopped her and said, I want to show you something. I want to get off the topic for just a moment to show you something else. And so he got up and went to his table, and he had a small potted cactus in a vase. And he brought it over and told her to hold out her hand. And he placed the vase in her hand. And he told her to hold the cactus, and he said, is this cactus causing you pain? And she said, no, I can hold this cactus. And he said, yes, you can. He said, now take the other hand and squeeze the cactus. And she refused to do that. Because she knew it would bring her agony, it would bring her a lot of pain. And he said, what I'm trying to show you is that there are many things that we can hold, that life brings us many emotional cacti in our lives, but it's us who squeezes the cactus. And we squeeze it, and we squeeze it, and we squeeze it, and then we squeeze it again. And it brings all the pain, it brings all the suffering. That's where the suffering comes in. Yes, there's pain, and yes, we don't understand why there are losses. We don't understand why certain things happen. We don't understand changes. We don't understand a lot of things. And many of them cause us great pain, and many of them cause us great discomfort. But the most discomfort comes when we squeeze it. And there's so many ways that we squeeze the cactus. There's so many ways that we squeeze the cactus. Let's take a breath. There's so many ways. You know, what I'm thinking about right now is that I get a lot of questions about all the things that are going on in the world, particularly things that are going on in the country, the things that are causing discomfort and unrest and divisiveness and all that. And it doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, there's discomfort and dis-ease and pain for both sides. And so the point is that I get a lot of questions about, well, what are we going to do about it? And then there's the rant that happens. Sometimes it happens at the back door when I'm standing back there. And sometimes people email me and they rant and rave about all the stuff that's going on. And what are we going to do about it? Or they call me, or they text me, or whatever. And not only people here, but people, family, friends, strangers, anybody who I'll listen to, and I seem to attract people who want to complain to me. Michael Beckwith used to say, your light is on. And when your light is on, it invites people in. And they come and tell you all kinds of stuff. And so that happens to me. The grocery store, Walmart, anywhere. But the point that I'm making is that because there is so much stuff going on and so much unrest and people want to do something about it, the thing to do is to first turn within. The thing to do is to first do what you know to do. The thing to do is to first come back to your center, because all that stuff can knock you off your center. That's the stuff that's happening in life. That's the stuff, and then, you know, there's a lot of noise out there. And we have to keep coming back to that place of silence. We have to keep coming back to that place of center. We have to keep coming back to that place where we can take a deep breath and be open and receptive to the guidance that is available to us. And when we can do that, we will know what to do. We will be guided as to what action we are to take, if there is an action for us to take. But to just jump up and start doing things, or jump up and start posting stuff on Facebook. And some of the things I see on Facebook, I've mentioned Facebook before. I'm mentioning it again today because I have seen some things that have been just unbelievable from some people in this community that have just surprised me. Let's take a breath. Because what I'm trying to say is that it shows me that people are squeezing the cactus. Because if you're dissatisfied with something and then you're on Facebook and you're calling people names, or you're arguing with somebody, or you're spouting off your anger and spouting off your judgment and spouting out your blame and all that stuff, that's squeezing the cactus, because it's really, it's turning inward to you, because all the stuff you're spitting out, or spouting out, whatever, it comes back to us anyway. And so where's the consistency? Because it can be Sunday evening, And some people would have just left CLF. And other people would have left other churches. And then they're on Facebook calling names. And I just want to know, where's the consistency between what we believe and what we're saying on Facebook? Where's the consistency between believing that we are all one? Not just us in this room. We can accept that as long as we're in this room, about all of us being one. But what about when we step outside this door? And I say this over and over again. What about when we step outside this door? What about when we see something on TV that we don't like, or hear something that we don't like, or somebody posts something, not just Facebook, any social media? That's the only one I know how to get on. And I don't get on there very often, but sometimes when I do, it's very, very disturbing. Because what happened to the belief that we had, that God is all there is? What happened to the belief that we have, that God is in the midst of everything? What happened to the belief that we had, that God, that we are all made in the image and likeness and out of God? And if I am, so are you, and so is he, and so is she, and so are they. All made in the image and likeness and out of God. So if we really believe that, when are we going to start living it? And we have to live it outside these doors. We have to live it off this campus. We have to live it when we walk out into the world. And what I'm saying to you today is that the world needs our consciousness. The world needs our consciousness. The world needs our consciousness. I'm here to tell you, it starts with us. Just like the song says, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. It has to begin with me. It has to begin with me. It has to begin with me. Judgment does not change anything. It cements everything. It cements everything. I think I've told you before that I have a minister friend, Reverend Deborah Johnson, who always said that judgment is like negative glue. It glues the other person to the spot wherein they are, right then and there. That's how judgment works. People can't change so long as we are judging them, because we're seeing them the way that we think they are, and they respond just like we see them. It's funny when we start to see people differently, how they start to act differently. When we start to see people differently, we start to treat them differently. When we start to see them differently, the energy field all around us and them will change, will shift. And as that happens, that's how the world changes. That's how the world changes. And so I'm saying to you, rather than squeezing that emotional cactus that we all squeeze at some point or another, let's just hold. Let's just hold it. We can even put it down. We can hold a space for it. And when we are holding a space for it, then things can start to shift, because there's a space through which Spirit can work. There's a space through which God can work in and through and as my life. There's a space through which God can work in and through and as your life. There's a space through which God can work in and through and as this community. And that's what we want to be, a community in which God can live and move and have its being and express itself to the very fullest through each one of us, always. That's the kind of community we want to be here at Creative Living Fellowship. That's the community that we want to be. We don't want to be ones who are moaning and groaning about them and they and him and her, and whether we agree or not. If we don't agree, first take it to prayer. How many times have you prayed about something you didn't like in politics? Pray about it. Ask for guidance. That's what treating and moving your feet is all about. You do the prayer work, and then you'll be guided as to how to move your feet. But get the guidance first. Act from a place of centeredness, from a place of groundedness, from a place of oneness. And when we act from places of oneness, we get to experience oneness everywhere we go and in everything we do. That's what diving in is all about, Dan. Thank you for bringing that up. That's what it's all about for us. That's what diving in is all about. That's what holding the cactus rather than squeezing it is all about. And so I'm inviting you to, number 3, develop a mental equivalence for freedom. Develop a mental equivalence of freedom. Of freedom. Because you know what? Everything is about consciousness. I say this every week, too, in English. So I'm going to learn how to say that in Spanish. Everything is about consciousness. Everything is about consciousness. Everything is about consciousness. And we cannot experience anything that we do not have a mental equivalent for in our own consciousness. If we are experiencing something, we don't know where we are in consciousness. What are we experiencing? That's not to say that we can't change it. And that's not to say that we don't have those little dips sometimes. You know, we have to engage in our practices that will help us to maintain the steadiness and the sturdiness in our lives. And we do that by our constant spiritual practice. Now, I know I talk about spiritual practice a lot. In fact, I think I talk about it every week because I think that's all I know to talk about, because that's what we have to do. We have to do our spiritual practice. It is not exciting. Spiritual practice is not exciting. It's not sexy. Well, I'm glad to hear. I'm glad to hear. I have some people disagreeing with me. I have some other people who talk to me about how boring it is to do spiritual practice. How boring it is. It's not sexy. It's, you know, it means that you got to do that same thing over and over and over again. I got to meditate again. Got to meditate. Got to meditate again. It's like Groundhog Day. Got to meditate again. Got to pray again. I just did that. Didn't I just do that this morning? Yeah. Got to do it again. Yeah, morning and evening, every day, over and over. Those practices that help us to remember who we are and to be able to move back into that place of knowing who we are and to be able to live that life of one who knows who we are. That's what spiritual practice does for us. And so whatever your practice may be, add to it. Add to it. I think Rochelle had a class where she was saying, let's double our spiritual practice. How about that? Doubling your spiritual practice. Do you know how your life would take off if you were doubling spiritual practice? If you were consistently doing those things? Well, right now, for some people, doubling means beginning. I'm not calling any names. But for some people, it means beginning. And that's not a criticism. That's just a fact. And if it means that, and you start right now to develop and to experience you can say it, and to have a spiritual practice, then by all means do that. By all means dive in. By all means do that. It's time. It's time. It's time. It's time. Be consistent with what we want in the way that we act, the way that we speak, the way that we think, the way that we talk. We cannot say one thing in here and go out there, as I said, and say something different. We cannot think one way and act another. We cannot say we want one thing and then do another. That's not consistency. All of it has to be consistent. We have to constantly be on the same page within our own being. All parts of us have to be on the same page so that we're all moving forward. That's what we all want to do. We all want to move forward. And as we move forward, our energy field expands to include everybody, and people start to move forward with us. We create a space for somebody else to move through. We create a space for somebody else to rise up. We create a space for somebody else to have a higher consciousness. We create a space for the world to change. And it can start with each one of us. It can start with each one of us. And I am saying to you that it is time for us to stop complaining. It is time for us to stop moaning and groaning and start really, 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 really diving deep and opening up and just allowing the power and the presence of God to work in and through and as our very lives. And that's how we change the world. That's how we change the world. And it's up to us to do that. It's up to us to do that. We worry about what kids are learning because of what they see others doing. What are they learning about what they see us doing? If all they see us doing is sitting back complaining, is that what we want kids to learn? Is that how we want them to change the world? They have to see us do it. We have to be the ones. We are the ones who are being called up right here and right now to change this world. We are the ones who are being called up right here and right now to make a difference. We are the ones who are being called up right here and right now to really show that we believe what we say we believe. That we really do believe that we are all one. We really do believe there's only one power, one presence, one mind, one life. That we really do believe that there's a divine intelligence in back of all things that is having its being in each and every one of us. We really do believe. We really do believe that God is all powerful. When we start moaning and groaning, we don't act like we believe that. But we really do believe that God is all there is. We have to show that we believe that in our livingness. In our livingness. In our livingness, we can't just talk about it. We have to show it every moment of every day. That's where integrity comes in with consistency. We have to show it whether anybody's looking or not. We have to show it whether anybody's looking or not. Aristotle says that integrity is doing the right thing when nobody's watching. We have to show it whether anybody's paying attention, whether anybody knows that we're doing it or not. So I invite you to be willing to make the changes that need to be made in your own life, in your own beingness. Ernest Holmes says that the demonstrations that we make today or tomorrow or the next day are not as important as the tendency of our thought or the dominant attitude of our minds. If every day is a little bit happier, and every day is a little bit better, and every day is a little bit healthier, and each and every day we are experiencing more life, then we're moving in the right direction. And that's what we have to keep in mind, that it isn't a big demonstration that we have to have, and it would be wonderful if we do, and sometimes we do. But if there's a tendency toward better, there's a tendency toward good, there's a tendency toward greater, there's a tendency toward more, there's a tendency toward more availability for the allness and for the fullness of God to come through, then we're all heading in the right direction. And that's how we dive in. So I'm inviting you all to dive in. Dive in. Dive in. The water's fine. Let's take a breath. There's an affirmation also from the 4T class. I'm a spiritual being. I live in a spiritual universe governed by spiritual law. I'm a spiritual being. I live in a spiritual universe governed by spiritual law. I'm a spiritual being. Let's say it together. I'm a spiritual being living in a spiritual universe governed by spiritual law. Again, I am a spiritual being living in a spiritual universe governed by spiritual law. Once more, I am a spiritual being living in a spiritual universe governed by spiritual law. Let's take a breath. And so it is, because that spiritual law is the law of God. And so as we turn within in this moment, we are turning within to that allness and that fullness and that presence and that onlyness known as God. The only life, the only power, the only presence, the only intelligence, that infinite presence known as God, the source of our being, that onlyness that is my very life, that onlyness that is the life of each one of us here this day. We dive into that onlyness right here and right now. Right here and right now, and allow it to have full sway. We say yes to it each time we take a breath, opening our hearts, opening our minds, opening our entire being, and just allowing all else, anything unlike it, any otherness to fall away as we just allow ourselves to be in that place of oneness, to be in that place of onlyness, to be in that place of God. For everything that we could need or desire is contained within this place of God. And so I speak the word for each of us this day that we let go of those things that would limit. We let go of those things that would hinder or encumber in any way. We burst that bubble of limitation, whatever we may call that limitation. We let that go. And we open ourselves up and allow God to have full sway in our lives as our lives. And so I know that as we do this, healing is happening because we are healing that sense of separation that we have from God. So healing is happening on every level of our being. Healing is happening on every level of the being of this community. Healing is happening within us, and we take this healing out into the world. This word that I speak goes out into the world to anyone who needs a prayer this day, knowing that God is in the midst of everything. Everything. God's in the midst of it. God is in the midst of everything. And knowing that truth, healing is happening everywhere. And so I pause momentarily so that you may speak the names of anyone you'd like held in prayer. You may speak their names silently, and you may speak them now. And so for all those whose names were spoken here this day, I'm saying God is right where each of them is, blessing and keeping them. Thank you, Father, Mother God. Thank you, Infinite Presence. Thank you, Divine Mother. I know indeed that all is well. All is well. All is well. And I just allow it to be. And so it is.